Check the group chat, Addie. Hunter needed the legroom. You get it, right? You're always so self-sufficient anyway. We'll bring you back a souvenir. Love you, mean it. The voicemail from my sister Cassidy didn't sound guilty. It sounded bored, like she was explaining why she'd swapped a generic brand of cereal for another, not why she had just stolen my seat in the SUV I paid for, heading to the $17,800 luxury retreat I had spent 3 grueling years funding. Is she actually serious? I whispered to the empty, freezing air of the garage. I looked at the oil-stained concrete where the rented Cadillac Escalade, my rental, should have been parked. It was 4:30 a.m. I was standing there in my thermal hiking gear, holding 2 heavy crates of artisanal catering I had prepared until 2 a.m. The sandwiches I'd hand-wrapped? Gone. The premium coffee thermoses? Gone. My family? Long gone. My name is Adriana Sterling. I'm 26 years old. In my professional life, I am a strategic data analyst for a restructuring firm. I spend 40 hours a week looking at spreadsheets to identify where a corporation is bleeding money and who the dead weight is. I am the person who tells CEOs which departments to amputate to save the heart of the company. But as I stood there in the pre-dawn darkness, I realized I had been the one being bled dry for 26 years. They didn't just leave me behind. They had outsourced my existence while using my bank account as the venture capital for their happiness. I didn't cry. My father, Harrison, always complained that I was cold or robotic because I didn't sob when I fell as a child or scream when I was passed over for my brother's achievements. He mistook my stoicism for a lack of feeling. In reality, it was just the sound of me calculating the cost of my next move. I walked back into the house that stood legally in my name, though Harrison liked to tell the neighbors he graciously managed it for me while I focused on my career. Every piece of furniture, every smart light bulb, every drop of heated water was paid for by the robotic daughter who was currently being ghosted on the I-80. I didn't call my mother, Madeline. I knew what she'd say. Addie, honey, you know how Cassidy gets when she's in love? Don't be dramatic. You'll enjoy the peace. The peace. That was their code word for my invisibility. I sat down at my workstation, the nerve center of my life. I flipped the master switch, and 3 32-inch monitors flared to life, casting a cold, predatory blue glow over my face. My fingers danced across the mechanical keyboard with a rhythmic, lethal precision. I wasn't a daughter right now. I was an auditor. And the Sterling family was officially bankrupt. Okay, Harrison. Okay, Madeline. I muttered, my voice tight with a rage that felt like liquid nitrogen. You want a vacation from me? You've got it. For exactly 10 more minutes. I pulled up the logistics folder for the golden anniversary trip to Lake Tahoe. Step 1, the infrastructure. I dialed the premium concierge line for the Tahoe Heights Lodge. Tahoe Heights, this is Sebastian speaking. How can I assist you? Hello, Sebastian, I said, my voice as smooth and sharp as a scalpel. I'm calling regarding the Diamond Suite reservation under my name, Adriana Sterling. There's been a significant security breach. My financial credentials have been compromised, and the individuals currently en route to your location are not authorized to use the booking. I need a full cancellation, effective immediately. There was a pause. Oh, goodness. We are within the 24-hour window, Miss Sterling. The $17,800 is non-refundable. I'm not asking for a refund, Sebastian. I'm reporting a fraudulent use of my assets. If you allow them to check in, you are knowingly accepting a payment from a flagged account. I'm filing the dispute with my bank as we speak. I'd hate for a 5-star resort to be caught in the middle of a grand larceny investigation, wouldn't you? The silence on the other end was the sound of a professional realizing they were standing on a landmine. I understand. I will flag the reservation and notify our security team to deny entry at the gate. We cannot risk a chargeback of that magnitude. Thank you, Sebastian. I hung up. My heart was thumping, but my hands were steady. That was the first thread. Now, it was time to pull the rest of the sweater apart until there was nothing left but a pile of cold, expensive yarn. Why are you so obsessed with the budget, Addie? It's a celebration, not a board meeting. Just make it happen. My father's voice echoed in my mind as I stared at the family logistics spreadsheet on my center monitor. Harrison had said those words 6 months ago, waving a dismissive hand while sipping a bourbon I had bought for his birthday. To them, making it happen was a magic trick. They didn't want to see the sleeves, they just wanted the rabbit to appear. I scrolled through the rows of data, each one a sting of remembrance. $17,800. That wasn't just a number. It was 3 years of saying no to myself. It was 3 years of driving my dented 2018 sedan while Cassidy paraded around in a leased convertible I had co-signed for and frequently made the payments on. It was 3 years of skipping nights out with friends and working 60-hour weeks at the firm to ensure my escape fund was fat enough. 3 months ago, Madeline had cornered me in the kitchen, her eyes brimming with practiced tears. Your father and I are drifting, Addie. This 30th anniversary. It's our last chance to be a family again. But we just don't have the liquid assets right now. If you could just lead the way for the family. And like a fool, I engaged the family protocol. I liquidated my down payment for a condo in the city, my ticket out of this house, and bought them a week of luxury in Lake Tahoe. I thought I was buying a seat at the table. I thought if I made myself indispensable, they would finally have to look me in the eye and see a person, not a utility. Transactional, I whispered, the word tasting like copper in my mouth. I made my love transactional, and they just decided the price was too high. I looked at the subtabs of the spreadsheet. It wasn't just the Tahoe trip. I looked at the household overhead tab. This house, this beautiful 4-bedroom colonial in the suburbs, was a lie. Harrison told the neighbors it was the Sterling estate, a symbol of his hard work. In reality, his credit score had cratered 5 years ago after a failed consulting venture. I had bought the house when I was 21 with an inheritance from my grandmother and my first signing bonus. I paid the property taxes. I paid the astronomical insurance premiums. I paid for the landscaping that Harrison took credit for while leaning on a rake. I clicked on the Services tab. The Family Cellular Plan. $320 per month. The High-Speed Fiber Internet. $110 per month. The Premium Streaming Bundle. $85 per month. The Automated Grocery Delivery. $250 per week. Everything was tethered to my primary business account. I was the life support system for a family that had just pulled the plug on me. You want to be self-sufficient, Cassidy? I said to the empty room, my teeth gritted so hard my jaw ached. Let's see how you handle the cold. I reached for my phone and opened the smart home interface. The app showed the SUV's location. They were currently stopping at a high-end rest stop in the Sierra Nevada foothills. They were probably laughing, Hunter probably bragging about his legroom while eating the $40 a pound prosciutto I'd sliced for them. My anger wasn't hot anymore. It was clinical. It was the cold detachment of a surgeon realizing the limb is too gangrenous to save. I began with the cellular plan. With 3 taps, I moved my number to a private solo account and suspended the other 4 lines for suspected device theft. Within minutes, their GPS would fail, their music would stop, and their ability to call for help would vanish. Next, I looked at the house around me. I dragged the digital thermostat slider down from 72 degrees, 70, 60, 50. I stopped at 42 degrees. Just enough to keep the pipes from freezing, but cold enough to turn the hallway into a tomb. The infrastructure is officially offline, I murmured. I stood up and walked to the kitchen, pouring the expensive coffee I'd brewed for them into the sink. I didn't need a souvenir from Tahoe. I was about to give them a memory that would last the rest of their lives. The blue light of my monitors felt like a shield against the encroaching cold of the house. As the temperature began its slow, inevitable crawl toward 42 degrees, I opened a new file on my desktop. I titled it, Project Liquidate. In my line of work, an audit isn't just about looking at what was spent. It's about examining the return on investment. For 10 years, I had invested everything, my time, my sanity, my hard-earned commissions, into the Sterling family. My ROI was currently sitting at 0. Actually, it was in the negatives. I began to pull up the receipts that were buried in my uncategorized folder. Here was the $4,500 bill for Cassidy's spiritual retreat in Bali last summer, which she claimed was for her mental health but was really just a backdrop for her Instagram. There was the $2,800 emergency car repair for Harrison, which I later found out was actually a down payment on a vintage watch he couldn't afford. 26 years of being the adult in the room, I whispered, the sound of my own voice startling me in the silence. I remembered being 7 years old, sitting at the kitchen table while Madeline and Harrison screamed at each other about a bounced check. I hadn't cried then, either. I had simply gone to my room, counted my piggy bank, and brought them the $12.40 I'd saved. Madeline had hugged me and called me her little savior. That was the trap. They had conditioned me to believe that my only value was my ability to fix their disasters. I was the safety net that allowed them to jump without ever looking where they were going. I clicked on the rental agreements folder. The SUV they were currently driving, the black Cadillac Escalade, was a premium rental under my corporate account. I had opted for the full coverage and concierge roadside package. Let's see how much you enjoy the ride when the driver's license on file is flagged, I muttered. I logged into the rental agency's portal. I didn't report the car stolen. That would be too messy and involve too much paperwork for me later. Instead, I simply updated the authorized drivers. I removed Harrison. I removed Madeline. I left only myself. Then, I triggered a vehicle recovery request, stating that the vehicle was being operated by unauthorized individuals and I wished for it to be picked up at its next stationary location. I watched the little GPS dot on my screen. They were still at the rest stop. They were likely confused by their phones suddenly losing service. I could almost see Cassidy shaking her iPhone in frustration, and Hunter, dear, useless Hunter, cluelessly trying to restart the car's Wi-Fi. Are you having fun yet, Hunter? I asked the screen. Is the legroom worth the silence? I turned my attention back to the house. I had bought this property 3 years ago to keep us from being evicted after Harrison's consulting firm went bankrupt for the 3rd time. I had let them stay here under the guest provision, never charging them rent, just asking them to be a family. I opened my bank's app and began the final process of the digital purge. I canceled the automated payments for the gardener, the pool boy, and the weekly cleaning service. I looked at the recurring payments list and saw the subscription for the wine club Harrison loved. Delete. The premium cable package Madeline used for her soaps. Delete. As I clicked each button, a weight seemed to lift from my shoulders. It was the weight of their expectations, their greed, and their casual cruelty. I looked at a photo on my desk, one of the few of us all together. We were at a beach, smiling. I looked closely at my own face in the photo. I wasn't smiling with my eyes. I was looking at the camera with the expression of someone who was already planning the exit strategy. The audit is complete, I said, hitting the save button. And the conclusion is clear. The Sterling family is a liability. It's time to terminate the contract. I leaned back in my chair, the leather creaking. The house was down to 58 degrees now. I could see my breath in the dim light. I reached for my thick wool sweater and wrapped it around myself, feeling a strange, cold sense of peace. They were 150 miles away, stranded, disconnected, and about to be kicked out of a car they didn't own. And I was right where I belonged, in control. The GPS dot on my monitor had stopped moving for 20 minutes. They were still at the rest stop, likely huddled together in the plush leather seats of the Escalade, trying to figure out why the world had suddenly gone dark. No 5G, no navigation, no music, just the sound of the wind whistling through the mountain pass and the realization that they were effectively stranded. I didn't give them time to breathe. My next move was about the total cost of ownership. I logged into the Sterling family's shared expenses credit card portal. This was the card I kept in my wallet but let Madeline and Cassidy use for emergencies. Over the last month, emergencies had included a $900 hair appointment for Cassidy and a $1,200 designer suit for Harrison. "Time for an immediate freeze," I said, my fingers clicking with a sharp, staccato rhythm. I didn't just lock the card, I reported it as stolen. "Theft by an internal party?" I typed into the reason box. This would trigger an automatic investigation. Any attempt they made to buy a coffee, a gallon of gas, or a hotel room would now result in a declined message and a potential call to local law enforcement. I looked at the golden anniversary itinerary I had printed out weeks ago. It was a masterpiece of planning. Day 1, a $2,500 private chef dinner at the lodge. Day 2, guided heli skiing at $1,800 per person. I wonder who's going to pay for that chef now, I mused. Maybe Hunter can wash the dishes. My phone buzzed on the desk. It was an incoming call from an unknown number. I knew it was them, likely using a borrowed phone from a confused traveler at the rest stop. I let it ring and ring and ring. Then I watched it go to voicemail. Addie, pick up! Madeline's voice was frantic, the high-pitched trill of a woman who had never been told no in her life. "The phones aren't working, and the car's GPS is dead. We tried to buy gas, and the card was declined. Harrison is furious! Pick up right now, Adriana! This isn't funny!" I deleted the message without a second thought. I didn't want to hear her panic. I wanted her to feel the consequences of her choices. I turned my attention to the smart home security system. This house was a fortress of modern technology, all controlled by a central hub. I opened the access control menu. There were 4 registered users: me, admin, Harrison, Madeline, and Cassidy. I clicked on Harrison's name. Delete user. I clicked on Madeline's name. Delete user. I clicked on Cassidy's name. Delete user. I then initiated a master lockdown. This mode was designed for when the owner was away for months. It disabled all exterior keypads and remote garage door openers. The only way to get inside now was with my physical master key or through the biometric scan on my phone. "You wanted to replace me on the trip," I whispered to the empty, chilling hallway. "So you've been replaced in this home. Fair trade." I walked to the kitchen and grabbed a bottle of expensive champagne I had been saving for their return. I popped the cork, the sound echoing like a gunshot in the silent house, and poured a glass. The temperature was now 52 degrees. I could see the faint mist of my breath with every exhale. I sat back down at my desk and looked at the clock. It was 6:15 a.m. They would be realizing by now that the car wasn't just glitching. If the rental recovery team was as efficient as their contract promised, a tow truck would be pulling into that rest stop within the hour to reclaim the vehicle. I opened the strategic reorganization folder. This wasn't just about a vacation anymore. This was a total divestment. I began drafting the legal notices: notice of termination of tenancy, revocation of financial power of attorney. I was stripping away every layer of protection I had ever provided them. By the time they made it back, if they even could, they wouldn't be returning to their comfortable sanctuary. They would be returning to a cold, dark shell of a life that they no longer had the keys to. System override complete, I said, taking a sip of the crisp, cold bubbles. Phase 1 is over. Now, let the real drama begin. The silence in the house was no longer empty. It was heavy, vibrating with the weight of the bridges I was systematically burning. At 50 degrees, the air had a bite to it that felt strangely refreshing. I sat in my ergonomic chair, wrapped in a heavy wool throw, watching the digital ghost of my family flicker on the screen. I opened the network management console. My family lived their lives online. Cassidy's influencer aspirations, Madeline's endless shopping, and Harrison's desperate attempts to look like a high-rolling investor on LinkedIn. To them, the internet wasn't a utility. It was their oxygen. Time to cut the air, I whispered. I navigated to the router's MAC address filtering. I could see all their devices currently trying to ping the home network from afar, or perhaps they were just the ghosts of their presence still haunting the bandwidth. Cassidy iPhone 15, Harrison Pro MacBook, Maddie iPad Air, Hunter Guest Device. The sight of Hunter Guest Device made my blood boil again. He was a stranger, a 20-year-old with no job and a penchant for expensive hoodies, and they had chosen his comfort over my very existence. I selected all of them. Block all. Then I changed the SSID, the name of the Wi-Fi network itself. It used to be Sterling High Speed. I typed in the new name, Ryan_pays_now. It was a jab, a digital middle finger that they would see the moment they stepped back onto the property and their phones tried to reconnect. I set a 32-character password of random symbols that even a supercomputer would struggle to crack. My phone buzzed again. A text message from a new number, probably Cassidy. Adriana, this isn't funny anymore. We are stuck at a rest stop in the middle of nowhere. A man just showed up saying he's here to repossess the SUV. He said the authorization was pulled. Mom is having a panic attack and Dad is screaming at the tow truck driver. Call us now! I stared at the screen. I could picture the scene perfectly. Harrison, red-faced and puffing out his chest, trying to intimidate a tow truck driver who was just doing his job. Madeline, weeping into a pashmina, looking for an audience to pity her. And Cassidy, more worried about her phone battery than the fact that they were about to be stranded in the snow. I typed my first and only response. Legroom is expensive, isn't it? Enjoy the hike. Don't bother calling again. This line is being disconnected. I didn't wait for a reply. I went into my service provider portal and hit the button to port number. I moved my primary line to a new private business account and let the family plan, the one I had been paying $320 a month for, expire into delinquent status. With that, the digital tether was severed. They were now in a total blackout. No data, no roaming, no way to access the cloud-stored boarding passes, or the lodge confirmation emails that no longer existed anyway. I leaned back and looked at the smart locks log. The garage keypad had been attempted 3 times in the last minute. Remote attempt. Denied. Invalid code. Invalid code. They were trying to use the app to open the house from the road, thinking they could at least send Hunter or a friend back to get things. But I had already wiped the server. To the smart home hub, Harrison and Madeline Sterling didn't exist. They were intruders. I got up and walked to the window, pulling the heavy velvet curtains shut. The house was a fortress now, and I was the only one with the map to the interior. I felt a surge of adrenaline, a sharp, cold high that came from finally setting a boundary that couldn't be ignored. In my firm, we call this hostile restructuring. It's what happens when the stakeholders are too greedy and the assets are being mismanaged. You strip the board of their power, you seize the infrastructure, and you let the company fail so something better can be built from the ashes. You wanted a vacation from the robotic daughter, I said to the dark living room. I hope you like the destination I've chosen for you instead. I poured the rest of the champagne. It was 7 a.m. The sun was rising over the horizon, casting long, pale shadows across the frost-covered lawn. The world was waking up, but for the Sterlings, the lights were going out for a very, very long time. Family isn't an excuse to use you. Don't be a doormat just because you're related. If they don't respect you, set your boundaries and start putting yourself first. Thanks for listening. If you enjoyed this, please like, comment your thoughts, and subscribe for more stories. See you next time.